That's the one thing. Whether they want to be. I did call and back, tell and say, I said they don't really tell us anything. Coming on the bye. No, because I are very correct. Ojo. Yes, I know. Yeah, Mama. What's up?
Easy to keep.
You get national keyboard, not there. I get national anthem.
Wait, can I get national anthem?
If you even play, I get all this.
No, no worry, no need.
No.
good afternoon from this side of the auditorium. First, permit me to apologize that we are starting way behind schedule. I remember those days in Nigeria where there is a Okay, and you? Okay, that's your physical. Okay.
Then you can even remove
Okay. I remember then when there's a power cut, you hear something like it was due to a shortage in transmission from the TV stations then. They will tell you that it was due to some transmission failures. Ours was due to some technical issues that we needed to sort so that we can have a hitch-free lecture. On behalf of the organizers of this lecture, once again, I apologize to our distinguished guests and participants for starting at about this time. This program will be starting right away as we all rise to take the national anthem. You don't know the national anthem offhand? You are falling my hand, though. You are falling my hand. Are you ready for us? Or we need to start. Are you ready? If you're not ready, we'll start. After the count of just 2 minutes, After the count of 2. 1, 2, go. Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians all are proud to serve our sovereign motherland. Our flag shall be our symbol, where truth and justice reign. In peace or battle honored, and this we count as gain. To hand unto our children our banner without stain. We do the Uniband anthem. All right, let's go. All over the wide world, our fruitful works unfold. What we sowed with joy and pride, with good our common goal. One heart and voice for all, we the purple cry call. Arise, mighty Uniband, rolled in your purple and gold, clad in your fertile green hem, knowledge for service untold. Greatest Uniband, greatest of the greatest Uniband. Please, you may be seated. A round of applause for yourself again for staying through with us. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, distinguished members of faculty, ladies and gentlemen here present, students of the great Faculty of Social Sciences. It is my singular honor to welcome you heartily to the distinguished faculty lecture of the Faculty of Social Sciences. Today, 24th September 2025. We have with us this afternoon our very own Vice-Chancellor, a distinguished personality who has shown himself in the last 9 months not only to be energetic but a dynamic and resourceful individual, result-oriented, pragmatic, who has brought a lot of laurels home for us in the last couple of months as the Vice-Chancellor. I'm talking about none other than Professor Edoba Omoregie, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. He is represented here this afternoon by none other than another distinguished scholar of repute, Professor Christopher Osunde, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor Administration. Professor Christopher Osunde is not alone. He's also here with other distinguished members of management. We have representing the Registrar and Secretary to Council, Mr. Dennis Aibe, Deputy Registrar, Council Matters. And also representing the University Librarian, Professor Mrs. Jane Abba, is Mrs. Patience Kayuma. You agree with me that this table is not complete? Abi? Is it complete? It's not complete. So, it's my singular honor to invite to this high table this afternoon the man who brought us here, the host of this program, my dean, your dean, the man who has brought all of us here this afternoon, Professor Osunde, Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences. Please, you need to give him a round of applause and encourage him. And of course, we have a very distinguished personality who we will be doing a proper introduction of much later in this program, but who has traveled all the way from the Republic of Ireland to deliver this very distinguished lecture. I'm talking about none other than Professor Cathal O'Donnell. Please make your way to the high table. Professor Cathal O'Donnell is established chair of social and public policy at the University of Galway and the chair of the board of the National Museum of Ireland. You're welcome, sir. We also have the singular honor of inviting to the high table this afternoon the former Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences, Professor Tonwe. Please make your way to the high table, sir. We have a big masquerade in our midst. And of course, you all know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about none other than Emeritus Professor Patrick Igbinovia. Please make him welcome to the high table this afternoon. Professor Emeritus Patrick Igbinovia. To the high table, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Because we are starting way behind the schedule, I don't want to waste much of our time. We'll go straight to some of the arrangements and programs that we have for this afternoon. But it's my singular honor to make welcome to the high table also Professor Mrs. Egafona. Please make your way to the high table now. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, with your kind permission, we will recognize a few of our guests, and thereafter we will continue with the other programs of the day. I'd like to welcome all the heads of departments of the Faculty of Social Sciences in no particular order. We welcome Dr. N. Arode, Department of Economics, you're welcome, sir. We welcome Professor Aheyisi, Geography and Disaster Risk Management, you're welcome. We welcome Dr. Deko, Department of Political Science. We welcome Professor Mustafa, HOD, Public Administration. It's like we have more of public admin people here. All right. Okay, don't worry. I'm checking out something. We have Dr. Mrs. Erica, social work. All right. And of course, the Dean's Department, Dr. Greg Ibinowahia, you're welcome. Of course, we welcome the former Dean of Students, Professor Clement Igudari. You're welcome, sir. We welcome Professor Mrs. Egafoda again. We welcome Professor Mwetia. Of course, we welcome Professor Dopesi. You're welcome, sir. We welcome Professor Togile. We welcome Professor Ugiagbe. You're welcome. We welcome Professor Ibinedion. We welcome also Professor and former public relations officer of this university. I used to see his name then. All right. I was still a small boy that time. Professor Eji Apomera. You're welcome, sir. We welcome also Professor Omoruyi. You're welcome, sir. We welcome Professor Luke Obasuri, a former librarian. You're welcome, sir. I saw a great man also here. We welcome Professor Anthony Asehan of the Department of Philosophy. You're welcome, sir. By the way, he was my teacher, so I should recognize him. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, this morning, it's my singular honor to invite to the microphone the Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, for his opening remarks. Please, a round of applause for the Dean, Professor Osunde.
Thank you so much. I have to stand on the already existing established protocol by the University PRO being represented here this afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone here. Yeah, we all know why we are here this afternoon. Yeah, let me tell you, we are here to actually enhance our knowledge and our capacity. And that is one of the culture in any university environment to actually organize a faculty public lecture for both students and staff of this university, and also for all others who may be invited from outside to gain a wide knowledge from all fields of human endeavor. So this morning, I have the honor and privilege to invite my former teacher, my former supervisor in the University of Galway, to come here to share his wealth of experience with us. I think that is one of the fundamental reasons we have to bring him here from Galway, from the Republic of Ireland to Nigeria, so that he can share his wealth of experience with us this afternoon. So I want to encourage all of us to sit down and listen attentively for his lectures this afternoon, so that when we leave here, we have something to take home. Thank you so much for your coming. Thank you so much. Thank you.
A round of applause for the Dean again. I understand that we have with us a former university librarian, Professor Idiodi. Now, apologies, ma'am. Welcome, and also a man we should not ignore, a very important person in the Faculty of Social Sciences, the Assistant Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences, Dr. Ukoma. You're welcome, sir. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we invite the Vice-Chancellor's representative to give us the Vice-Chancellor's goodwill message and declare this meeting open. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, sir. A round of applause.
Principal officers of the university here represented, the Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, our guest, distinguished lecturer, professors here present, former deans of Faculty of Social Sciences, professors, Professor Emeritus Igbinovia, you are welcome, sir. Former librarians, the former deans of social sciences and other faculties, professors here present, lecturers, and distinguished students of the great Faculty of Social Sciences. There's something unique about social science, the faculty. In fact, it's known as the faculty. So I'm not surprised that the faculty is here represented. So I want to appreciate you, especially the students, for turning out in this number for this guest lecture. The Vice-Chancellor would have loved to be here, but is on another official assignment. That's why he has asked me to stand in on his behalf. I want to thank everyone. It's great to see this slight number. And I'm not surprised because the title that was advertised is quite thought-provoking and is something that I see to be very interesting. And when the VC asked me to represent it, I said, yeah, I'll gladly do it because it's a topic that I cherish. For me as an environmentalist, I felt this issue of climate change, carbon emission is purely an environmental issue. But I now know that it goes beyond. It's also a social issue, just as it's an economic issue. Because I was trying to reflect on the title that was advertised. And it talks about the carbon emission, the drivers of carbon emission, the distribution, and so on. And if you look at it, you will find that for the third world, for the poor nations, their contribution to carbon emission is low. And they expect that we also should contribute equally as the developed. Meanwhile, it's the developed nations that contribute immensely to carbon emissions. So it's an issue that has to do with equality, inequality, it has to do with poverty, it has to do with the different national economic and social status. So it goes beyond the environmental that I used to see it from that perspective. And so I want to adjourn every one of us that is here to listen critically because this topic I believe is thought-provoking, and every one of us, when we do a deep thinking of this topic as we listen to it, I know that is going to be a robust conversation. So I want to thank our guest lecturer for agreeing to come and deliver this lecture, and I want to also thank the dean and the faculty for organizing this lecture. And I want to urge you that it's going to be a stimulating one. Having said that, it's my pleasure to declare the lecture open. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice-Chancellor. A round of applause for the Vice-Chancellor again. And I also want to appreciate the audience. You have been quite engaging. A round of applause for yourselves, especially those from social work. All right, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are already moving on to the climax of today's lecture. We'll take a brief citation on our guest lecturer, and thereafter he will be making his presentation. Citation on Professor Cathal O. Professor Cathal O. has been from 2016 the established chair of social and public no restriction policy located in the discipline of geography at National University of Ireland, now known as the University of Galway, Ireland. He also has an affiliation to the discipline of economics. From 2016 to 2020, he was the Dean of Arts and Social Sciences. And prior to this, he was since 2025 the head of Ireland's Agriculture and Food Development Authority Rural Economy and Development Program. He was a member of the board of TIGA's Research Directorate. He was also a member of the Fund Council of Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research, a $1 billion a year international agri-food research organization from 2014 to 2016. From 2012 to 2014, he was the Chief Executive Officer of the Irish Government's Commission for the Economic Development of Rural Areas. He was also the Chairman of the Irish Sports Horse Strategic Committee and also President of the International Microstimulation Association between the year 2011 to 2015. He is also on the executive of the United Kingdom's Agricultural Economic Society. In 2021, he was appointed chair of the foundation board of the Royal Dublin Society. I thought you would give him a round of applause. Professor Cathal is also a member of the Board of Music for Galway and chair of the Galway Music Centre. He is an alumnus of the University College Cork, Ireland, with manifest interest in statistics and economics. He had his postgraduate degrees from Oxford University, University College Dublin, the London School of Economics and Political Science, and the University of Warwick. If you are clapping, clap. He also had a stint with the ESRI, the UK Government Economic Service, the University of Cambridge, and the National University of Ireland, Galway. Professor Cathal O'Donnell's personal research program involves the development and use of policy simulation models, for which he holds a chair extraordinary at the University of Maastricht, as well as an adjunct position at the University College Dublin. He has over 150 research papers, publications, 5 books, and he has supervised over 40 PhD students to completion, amongst whom is our current dean, Professor Osunde, the Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences. He has also been an advisor to many international organizations and was a long-term advisor to the UK government's Department of Work and Pensions on policy modeling earlier in his career. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's my singular honor to invite this afternoon to the microphone to deliver today's guest lecture. Professor Cathal O'Donnell will be speaking to the topic, Distributional Drivers of Carbon Emissions in 9 countries globally. Please make welcome Professor O'Donnell.
Thank you. I'll just get one set up here. We're going to get started. Just say it's a real honor for me to be here. Thank you. to my friend, Professor Osunde. He's a great man. Thanks for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here. I really appreciate his hospitality. He's looked after me since I've arrived in the country. It's great to be here in Nigeria and in Benin City. And what a fantastic crowd, an energetic crowd. It's great to see you all. Thank you for turning out. And thanks for your patience. While they're waiting to sit up, I'll just tell you a little bit what I'm going to talk about. You've heard a little bit about my career. You see? What? Well, I'm here to give a lecture, but actually one of the main reasons I'm here is to rekindle the research program that I have and I've had for 22 years since I've known Professor Osunde. And we have plans to work together, and we've just finalising a research agreement that I'll talk about at the end. And one of the, I guess, the benefits of this proposed program is both to assist you students of Professor Osunde, and also to bring Nigeria into the type of analysis that I work on for various international organizations. Countries like Nigeria are important countries. It's where a lot of the dynamism in the world is now. I live in Europe, in the northwest of Europe, on a small island off the coast of northwest Europe. We have 5 million people. But the big change, since I was a child, the world's population has doubled, and it hasn't happened in Europe. It's happened in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia. This is where the change is happening in the world. And so if you want to make an impact on the world, you need to study countries like Nigeria. So this is when Professor Osunde was a PhD student of mine. He was incredibly dedicated. He came from here, he left his family behind, and he came to Ireland to work with me. He wrote to me out of the blue in 2003, 22 years ago. I was impressed with what he was suggesting, what he was interested in. We had a conversation, probably over a couple of years, I would say, a year and a half. And he got himself organised and came to Galway. And he lived in Ireland for 5 or 6 years. Actually, when he came to Galway, I got a job somewhere else, not too far from Galway, just outside, working with development, but we worked closely together during that whole period. And I will talk to you a little bit about what I do. I'm a statistician. I build models, but I'm interested in the economy, society, the environment. I'm interested in public policy. And Professor Osunde developed all those skills in really interesting work. And what I want to talk today is about the kind of work that I still do, 22 years on after meeting Professor Osunde, and how his work influences me to this day, and how we want to rebuild that to continue that to the future. So this is where we're going. So the field I work in, you may have heard the introduction, is a very kind introduction, I really appreciate it. It's called micro-simulation. It's a big word, it sounds complicated, but what it is, it's a tool that can help us to understand how different people are affected in different ways. Many economists are interested in averages, the country or the region, but we're all different. I'm interested in the people within those averages. We call them distributions, how different people have different living standards, different interests, different jobs. When you make a change to public policy, it affects people in different ways. And that's what I do. I build computer models like a laboratory where I can look at the design of public policy on the computer before you implement the public policy. So you improve the design of public policy before you spend the money. That's what I do. That's what, here we are, perfect, what Professor Osunde does. So that's the kind of the general introduction. It's a little bit broader than the advertised topic, in that I would also mention some of the things that we plan to work on together. That's the motivation for the talk. A lot of my work at the moment is on the environment, on carbon emissions and carbon pricing. But also we'll do some work on health, and that was the main focus of Professor Osunde's PhD. So I just wanted to say, when I said to my colleagues that I was coming here to visit, everybody remembered him. He made an impact on people. I still, just last week, I was referencing the effort and the work that he put in, and he's inspiration to my students today. I have actually over 50 PhD students graduated at this stage. That's been my main focus academically, to work with young people, to bring them forward, and we have a high standard. I have a research group that meets every Tuesday, and we have a really high standard. And my job is to give my students, my PhD students, a good start. And if they go on to do great things, like Professor Osunde here. So, on the 4 dimensions of the lecture, the first bit is about the method. It's about managing complexity, understanding the diversity that we see here. We're all different. You have different interests, you have different abilities, you have different skills, different ambitions, you do different things. I'm interested in how people are different. And then we'll consider 3 examples of current and recent research of mine, of how we're trying to understand the impact on different people of things that happened. In Ireland, we've had 3 major crises in the last 15 years or so, major economic crises that have affected people quite significantly, very significantly from a European perspective. And we were in the British Empire until 1922. We got independence a little over 100 years ago. We've made many mistakes since then. But we hopefully learn from them and we move on. And this is a means to help us learn. Then, drawing upon the work of Professor Osunde in terms of understanding the health situation from people and the economic implications of particularly poor health. I consider some work that I'm doing right now for the World Health Organization. We're about to publish the Health Equity Status Report, looking at health inequalities. And I'll present some work on the consequences of improving health. If you can improve health, it's not just good for your health, but it's good for the economy. We'll see that. And then lastly, I focus on reducing pollution, the tools we have, because climate change really it's one of the biggest challenges we have in the world over the next 30, 40, 50 years. And countries like in the middle latitudes like Nigeria and your neighbouring countries, we're seeing the impacts already. It's a major existential crisis for the planet. So, as a starter, I'll give a little background to this methodology I use. I don't have any maths. I have lots of numbers, all right, but I'll talk through the numbers. You don't need to understand anything else. I'm interested in evaluating policy, both after it's been implemented, but mainly actually before. You think you want to achieve something, and we want to see what will the impact be before you spend the money. So how much will it cost? Who's affected? Which parts of the population will be affected? Poor people, rich people, people for children, old people, young people. So vertical inequality, horizontal inequality. Something politicians are really interested in is who loses from a policy. Not so much who wins, but who loses. Because people who lose complain more than people who will appreciate. So when you run these models for politicians, they want to know which groups are losing. And are groups that are well organized, are they losing? Because if that's going to happen, the policy is not going to work. and we see that a bit later on with some of the climate policies. There were too many losers sometimes, and there was a lot of pushback. We see that in Europe quite a lot. In the behaviour response, some policies aim to change behaviour. When we have environmental policies, it's not about taking money from the rich, giving to the poor. It's about poverty. It's not about spending money on hospitals. It's about encouraging us to pollute less, to spend money on things that produce less pollution rather than things that produce more pollution. So many policies have the specific focus of changing our behaviour. And when I think about complexity, and this is what these models do, models help us to understand complex things. If we could work it out in our head, we wouldn't need a model. And so we use an economic model in the computer to help us to understand complexity, because more than we can cope with in our own heads. And I think of three types of complexity in the work I do mainly. So the first, I'm interested in policy, all sorts of policy. Tax policy, social policy, environmental policy, rural development, environmental policy, agricultural policy, education policy, health policy. I'm a statistician originally, so I just changed the variables and I give them a different name. I always work with experts who know their subject area. I think at this stage I've worked for 35 years in modelling. I know a little bit about approximation modelling, but I don't know everything. I work with people who know their own areas. So in all my work, if you look at my papers, I have very few single author papers. I collaborate. I see the benefit of collaboration, working with others. Thank you. So I'm here because I'm interested in working in Nigeria, but I want to work with people who know about Nigeria. I can bring the modelling, but I need collaborators here who know about your country and who can help interpret the numbers. I need to be here to understand Nigeria if I'm going to be writing about Nigeria. I don't want to be writing Nigeria without having been here. And I hope to come again. Thank you. So policy is the first thing. And often economists simplify policy, get an average. But when you look at the law on policy, there's a lot of detail. Lawyers are good in detail. And that detail affects people in different ways. And sometimes when you combine policies, the effect can be unexpected. And you use these models to line up the different policies to see how they interact and to see particularly who loses. When you add this and this and this, are all worthy policies, but when they combine, they have an effect that you hadn't expected. And these models help us to do that. Then you have population complexity. You look around here, you have different backgrounds. Your families are different. You have different life expectancy, you have different ambition, you have different work ethic. Some of you have disabilities. Some of you have caring responsibilities. We're different. We're all different. And when you I work with survey data, household survey data, usually representative for a country. You see how every household is different. Often we ask the average family. So the average family in Ireland is a couple with 2 kids who's working on the average wage. But actually, when you look at a household survey, there's nobody at the average. Maybe there's a few percentage who are of households that are like that. There's extraordinary diversity in every country in terms of the household makeup. And if you forget about that diversity, you're going to miss how the policy impacts. And so this is why we use representative populations to understand both how the complexity of the policy works interacted with the complexity of the population. You can't cope with this in your head. It's too much. So this is why we use computer models for this. And then lastly, behavior. I mentioned that before. There are lots of behaviors we're interested in. We want people to undertake healthy behaviors, not polluting. We want people to eat nutritious food. We want people to work. We want people to be ambitious. So we often incentivize people in our public policy to do the right thing. And so we try to incorporate that in our model as well. And then we're also in time. We do things now that affect the future. You're in university now. and you're studying, you want to make a good living later in your life, and to be good citizens and to be good for your family. The benefit you will get from here will be you'll get for the rest of your life. When you're old, you'll save maybe for a pension. You're investing now for the future. If you want to buy a house, you might borrow money for the future and buy a house now. So time is important in our policy. And place. Different places have different natural attributes. I've done a lot of work on rural development and how rural areas vary from urban areas. And we had a big financial crisis in 2008 to 12. It was 4 years. And rural areas were much more affected than urban areas. And I led a commission on how to make life better for people living in rural areas. So place is really important. We can group the policy analysis into two things. One is ex post. You implement the policy, you see what it was like after the fact. Did it work? But I'm interested in what we call ex ante analysis, which is before. I want to work on my computer, I want to talk to the policy people, I want to talk to the lawyers. What's the policy going to look like? And then I program it here, and I see how does it affect different households? To which people, do they benefit more, do poor people benefit more? Families with children, old people, students, whatever. In all the different policies I look at. So we look at after the fact. And even sometimes it can take a lot of time. And I worked on a research program with the UK government for over 10 years. We had 14 in the team working on one model, one computer model. It was a big team. But it saved billions. Because we were working on pensions, and pensions in Britain are billions per year. And if you can get the design better, even if the team was expensive to work on, it can save money, it can make it much more effective. So there's a very significant return on investment in doing this kind of work up front. Rather than waiting for after the fact and making mistakes and spending all the money, you iron out the rough edges on your computer beforehand. So what is a micro-simulation model? It is what it says in the word. There's two components. Micro, so that's looking at people in units. It could be families, households, people, farms, firms. We're looking at the variation across different units. And simulation, we simulate it on the computer. We examine the impact of mainly future policy, but also a little bit on previous policy. We've lost the slides, I think. I published a book with Oxford University Press a couple of years ago, which is where I wrote down the lessons from my research over the last 20 years, and I use it as a graduate textbook for people who study with me. And you see here, there's a number of micro-simulation papers per year. When I did my PhD back here, I could say I read every paper on microsimulation. I knew the whole literature. But now the field is big. Back then it was limited to countries that had data, that had access to computing. I had more power on this. You had more power on your phone than the computers I ran in the 1990s. We were trying to do complex analysis with very poor computing power. It was very difficult to get access to data. Now you've got great data. Nigeria's got great data. I was able to download it from the web, do some preparation before coming here. So it's much easier to work in this space, and because it's easier, there's many more papers. So when I have a PhD student, the first thing I get them to do is write a systematic review the topics in the area, understand what other people have done first before you do your own work. Whereas I could read every paper that was there. Now we take a sample. We can't read every paper. You can't read 7,000 papers a year. Maybe we aim to read about 150 papers when you're doing that. So the field is becoming big and it's useful. This is what countries do now when they're designing public policy. And we want to work here to develop develop the Nigerian model over the next period. I won't talk so much about the model here, just given we have a non-technical audience. I want to tell you a little bit about some of the case studies that we've looked at. So a very big concern we have in Ireland are what we call the squeezed middle. These are people in middle class, they've gone to university, they've worked hard, they've studied hard, they've married their children, they've borrowed money for their house, it's expensive. Maybe it's expensive if they live a little bit further away from where they work. So they buy the best house they can. But they feel poor. The war has gone expensive, and I've travelled to many countries. I went to Indonesia a couple of months ago, and the same issues affect them. People who have worked hard, invested in their futures, are finding it expensive to live. We've all seen prices increase, and the cost of a middle-class lifestyle has increased. And it's hard to see here, but this is the cost all over the world now. We see it in the States. We see the chaos at the moment. And we see people in the middle, their incomes have fallen behind that at the top over the last 30 years. And we're seeing the effects politically. And in a world now with many challenges, we need to bring our people with us. And if people feel left behind, then they're less likely to engage with ambition around things like climate change. Or when the pandemic hit, we had to behave in particular ways. If we lose trust, then it's hard to convince people to do things for the public good. So when people feel that they've done everything they can, but yet they're poor, despite they've done everything asked of them, then they're the people who get fed up and don't support the political process. So this graphic here describes two economic crises that hit Ireland. And it describes, these are poor people, these are rich people. The bars going here with their purchasing power, what they could spend went up. The bars here, it was that their purchasing power went down. We had a major financial crisis. We were a poor country. Ireland was a poor country until the late 1990s, one of the poorest countries in Europe. But we rapidly increased the proportion of our population that went to university. We attracted in big business with good jobs, and we became a rich country in about 20 years. But we went a bit bananas. We borrowed lots of money. We built big houses and fitted them out with TVs and nice kitchens and things. Money we didn't have, we borrowed. And when the financial crisis came in 2008, and I think rents on Grafton Street, the main street in Dublin, were higher than in Manhattan. It was ridiculous. We weren't that rich. But we went a bit crazy. And when the crash came, when Lehman Brothers collapsed in 2008, our house prices went down 50%. Lots and lots of people lost their jobs. Our government couldn't borrow on the international financial markets anymore. They didn't trust us that we could repay. We had to be bailed out by the IMF, by the European Central Bank. We had to cut back expenditures. My salary went down 25%. It was a very difficult time. And there was a period in many European countries faced this called austerity, where we cut back expenditure. Rather than protecting people from the shock, we made them poor. And you see that here. Across, from rich people to poor people were a lot poorer, a lot worse off. During the pandemic, it was different. During the pandemic, to some extent we were in a better financial shape going into it, but the central banks, the European Central Bank, brought interest rates almost to zero. All governments could borrow. They could, in Europe anyway, they could borrow from the future to protect people when they lost their jobs during the pandemic, when people stay at home for the better good, for the greater good. There was a completely different attitude. It wasn't austerity, it was we're all in this together, we'll protect the poorest. In fact, the poorest were most best off because they didn't have to commute, and some of the housing costs were waived, they didn't have childcare costs, and they got relatively generous benefits. They were protected. And this graphic here describes the trust in government. And when we had the financial crisis, trust in government fell. There was a rise here with election. They thought the election, everything would be better. It wasn't. It came back down again. And gradually, as the economy recovered, the trust in government increased again. People felt better off, and they trusted the government. And what happened when the coronavirus pandemic came? Because of this, because we protected people, instead of going down like this in the financial crisis, it actually went up. People knew we were in a crisis. We knew it was difficult, but we appreciated that we were looked after this time rather than the previous time. In the last year or so, the last couple of years with the cost of living crisis, increasing prices in food and fuel, some groups have done very well and some groups have really felt the strain. And I'm not going to talk about that, but we've seen trust in government go down again. So how a government looks after its people is really important. So this brings together economics, social policy, and political science, and they're all related. And they all depend upon each other. I did this graphic. This is not high science. I just charted the trust institutions from the European Social Survey. But I found, ironically, that this was one of the things when I was presenting my work on the COVID crisis. This was the most interesting things that the likes of the World Health Organization picking up on, because they know the importance of politics. They want people to engage in good health behaviour. They want people to trust the government, and so that was really important. So we move on to talk about health, some of the work that we're doing in health right now. So we've been asked by the World Health Organization, so I'm on a group where they're trying to convince ministries of finance, economic ministries, economic agencies, central banks, not just to be interested in the economy, but also interested in health. Because lots of things affect our health. Our economic situation affects our health. If we can't afford a nice, comfortable place to live, we can get sick. If we can't afford the right food, we can get sick. So there are economic drivers. People can be sick because they're poor. So we were asked to help them with some of the work we did, and in the Health Equity Stage report, we're being asked to consider what's the impact of improved health, if we could improve health. And so we have in our surveys, we know about their health, we know about our incomes, we know our family situation. If we improve health, then people have a better chance of getting a job. They might, if they're working, they might get less benefits, less benefit income, more work income, and more tax revenue. And so not only can individuals benefit from having better health, but also the state can benefit too, because more people work, there's more taxes. So they want to emphasize the good return on investment of spending money on health. That's what WHO are trying to do, and they're using our numbers. And they're interested in health inequality. So what this graphic shows here for a number of countries that we're looking at, Finland, France, Ireland, Poland, Spain, and Turkey, the proportion of people with poor health who are less educated, primary, lower secondary, upper secondary, and tertiary. So these are university educated. And here's Turkey with significant health inequalities. Here's Ireland. Next, we have quite significant health inequality. We don't have a fully public health system. We have to pay for our health care. And it means some poor people can't afford the best health care. And we have significant health inequalities. Here you see Finland. Finland is a Scandinavian country with a very good welfare state. And you see very little inequalities in Finland. So we took a range of countries in Europe that had different backgrounds, and they had different health inequalities. And we considered that if we imagined that people with all education backgrounds had the same health outcome, so everybody had the same health status as the highest educated, what would be the consequence in terms of their income? And these red lines here in each of the countries indicate from poor to rich the benefit. So what happens? They're all positive, so we're better off, and the poor are better off more. So it's both income increasing and inequality reducing. So it reduces poverty, it reduces inequality, and increases income. So for many other public goals, it's worthwhile investing in healthcare. There are gender differences. Some countries, like in Turkey, like in Ireland, there are gender differences that we saw. There's a gap between men and women. Some countries like Finland, there are very few gaps. France, not so much. Poland, Finland, and France, not so much. I'll skip the age ones. And if we think about the public purse, what happens? uniformly we see expenditures and benefits reduce, so government savings in terms of expenditure that they can spend on other things. And this is 35% on those who are poor. And the increased tax revenue. And the countries with the biggest gaps, Ireland and Turkey, have the biggest savings in terms of tax revenue. So health expenditures are good for the household and it's good for the government. And I'm going to finish in the last example here on carbon pricing. So the world is getting hotter because we've been pumping emissions into the air for the last 200 years, and it's acting like an insulation blanket over the planet, and it's affecting all sorts of things. There are lots of consequences in very, very many different ways. And for the planet to remain livable for us, particularly in some of the central latitudes, mid-latitudes, we need to reduce our carbon emissions. And one of the things that governments do and can do is to put a price on carbon. If you burn fuels that produce greenhouse gas emissions like carbon dioxide, like methane from sheep or cattle, like nitrous oxide from manures or from fertilizer, these are things, and that's a hugely powerful greenhouse gas. We want to stop that. But if we place a price on it, then maybe people will produce less of it, or maybe more likely to use renewable energy, or move their food from animals like beef and sheep to chicken, for example, or fish that don't produce methane, for example. So this graphic here shows that there's programs underway in very many countries, not just in Europe and OECD countries, but across the world. And it's happening rapidly now to change behavior. So one of the consequences of environmental policy is richer people can save more, so they spend less of their money. Poor people spend nearly all their money because they're poor. They can't afford to save. And so if you place the same tax on a rich person as a poor person, the poor person will pay more tax because they're saving less. So the effect will be greater. So we're interested in how different people with different incomes are affected by environmental policy. And this graph is nine countries working, including Nigeria. So from Europe here, Turkey, Mexico, Nigeria, Pakistan, Indonesia, Finland, Poland, France and Germany, we see that between rich households and poor households there is energy inequality. So in the West we consume more energy than you do in Africa. And as people get richer, they want to use more energy. They buy things, they want their TVs or their phones, they want to charge, they want to use energy. And so both between countries and within countries, there's very significant energy inequality. And in developing countries, you see here in Pakistan, Nigeria, Mexico, there is significant difference in energy consumption between the top of the distribution and the bottom of the distribution. But all these countries are getting richer. And as these people get richer, they will want to consume more energy. So the challenge is that the energy that will be consumed is from a renewable source rather than from fossil fuel. That's the challenge. And we saw in Africa, as Africa moved into phones, it didn't do what we did in Europe and have copper cables all over the place. You moved to mobile technology. And so the challenge for countries like Nigeria, Pakistan, and Indonesia, as you demand to use more energy, they use it from a renewable source. And there's huge renewable sources here. Of course, Nigeria is a big fossil fuel producer as well. When we look at energy use as a percentage of income, it's called intensity. And here, in most cases, in Europe anyway, we see that poor households consume, relative to their income, spend a higher share of their income on fuels than richer households. It's not the case so much in some developing countries where fuel is more of a luxury, so it actually goes up with income here. The type of fuel, even if we're burning fossil fuels, the type of fuel matters. So solid fuels like coal produce more carbon emissions than liquid fuels like kerosene, which produce less emissions than gas. And so when we look across countries, we see a very different profile in terms of the energy consumption here in Nigeria. I think this is coal in the middle, kerosene and wood here at the bottom. So there's a different profile between richer people and poorer people. So it varies, and this will influence if you put a price on carbon and how people are affected. In Nigeria, richer people consume more expensive fuels. In Mexico, it's the other way around. In Poland, it's the other way around. In Turkey, it's like Nigeria. So it's very hard to draw conclusions from other countries. You really must do the analysis in your own country. And just move on to here. When we look at both direct fuel expenditure, so households spend money on fuels like coal, kerosene, gas, petroleum. But they also buy goods and services, and every good and service you spend money on energy, whether it be electricity or heating or whatever. The university consumes energy, or the fans are going, or the light. So if you price that energy, the carbon that you use in the energy, it's quite regressive in most countries. It's usually flat in Mexico. In Pakistan it increases with income, and in Nigeria it increases with income. So there's a different profile. As a country gets richer, it goes from being the richer people paying more of the tax to the poorer people paying more of the tax as you get richer. And yeah, I'll skip these things here. Now, when we raise tax, raise revenue, it means you generate money, you can spend some of the money. And one of the key conclusions, doesn't work out from Nigeria, is that how you spend the money has a much bigger impact on who's affected than the tax itself. So you must think of both the social policy and the tax policy. And that's something that we're not doing at the moment. Most of the research on environmental policy, looks at one side of the ledger, the tax bit. But we need people here doing social policy. What we do with our social policy and our expenditure policy, our public expenditure policy, is more important than the tax policy. We have to work together to see what the total effect is. And I'll leave that. And just a promo for some work we're doing at the moment with the OECD. It's a big global project. I'm trying to understand this, trying to understand the policy that exists and to understand how people are affected. And so I lead on the distributional work, and the OECD are very interested in seeing what happens in countries like Nigeria, which is why I'm here. And just to my last slide is to describe a little bit about what we're planning to do together with Professor Osunde and his team. So the first thing we want to do is we want to build upon the work that he's done, the work I've done, a little bit of work here, to build a framework for looking at different policies into the future, done in a comparable way so that we can compare Nigeria to what happens in other countries. In particular, some work that I did last year, looking at if the world hits their carbon targets, how it will affect both the economy and how it will affect poor people. We want to do this work for Nigeria, not just look at Europe, but we want to see how it affects Nigeria, Uganda, South Africa. We want to look outside of Europe. Nigeria has changed so much over my colleagues' lifetimes. We want to understand those changes, and I did some work in Ireland. I'm writing a book on Turkey at the moment. I'm doing some other work in other middle-income countries, Indonesia and Mexico. Middle-income countries are where things are happening economically at the moment. I want to try to understand it better and work with Professor Osunde and his colleagues on that. Building upon his PhD, which looked at AIDS at the time, which was an important health issue 20 years ago, I want to extend the health work with the WHO to Nigeria. And the United Nations are coordinating the development of these models. I want Nigeria to be one of the UN models. So I'm meeting the head of that team in 2 weeks. Thank you. Thank you. And I was president of the International Vaccination Association, which is a scientific body that does this type of modelling worldwide. And it's coming to Africa for the first time next year in Rabat. And Professor Osunde will participate there as well. And then lastly, day-to-day things, co-supervision. I'm willing to co-supervise, and Professor Osunde will co-supervise some of mine, and participate in an online development seminar series that we run. So there's lots of things we can do together. And this is not new work. This is not, it would be nice if we could do this. All this work has been done before. We want to bring it up to the present and make it future-proof. And just lastly, thank you. And if you could just see the last slide on, I have a team. I have a big team of people. And I want to acknowledge some of my co-authors who work with me, because I can't, if you look at my papers, it's not just me. I collaborate. I see the benefit of collaboration. I work with people who have their own skills, and we bring our skills together and do better things. And this is why I'm here. I'd just like to thank my colleagues and thank Professor Osunde. Thank you.
A standing ovation for Professor Cathal O'Donnell. Don't worry, we will break it down, don't worry. Just a round of applause first. Thank you so much, Prof. That was quite insightful and expository. I'd like to invite Professor Clement Edoba to do, just give us a few take-home points on the lectures. Please, a round of applause for him. Prof. Professor Godari is the Professor of Economics from our faculty. So he will be, thank you. Hold it. Okay.
The Vice-Chancellor, Professor Edoba Bright Omoregie, represented by DVC admin, other members of the high table, and our distinguished lecturer. Most of the things he talked about here, they are more of in the area of environmental economics and development economics. And I am sure we all got what he was talking about, or what he spoke about. Can we clap for him again? He talked about the distributional effect of carbon. When we're talking of carbon, sometimes, okay, let me put it this way. You see when drivers are driving on the way, you see those effluents, smoke that come out when you are cooking in the kitchen, when you are even using energy. What are the impacts? Who are the drivers? And what he's telling us is that, those responsible for those emissions are you and I. The households, two of us, industries, and even those with very high level of incomes. One thing you must know is that all these activities have economic dimensions, the social dimensions, and environmental dimension. An economic dimension, you will know that, whether I like it or not, the poor household, like you and I, two of us, am I not right? The poor household, like you and I. Okay, the poor household like myself. Fine. We spend more on energy, whether you like it or not. Whether energy is subsidized today or tomorrow. Most of us use firewood to cook. Mostly those of our brothers in the rural area. Two of us. Our brothers and sisters in the villages, how many of them use gas? It's rare, apart from those in the town. So you still go to fetch firewood. Apart from that, having fetching firewood has impact on your health. Two of us. When you use more of kerosene, the smoke that comes out there has a lot of impact on your health. And once your impact, when your health status is down, what happens to your employment level? Your employment level will also go down. And when your employment level goes down, what happens to your income? Your income will not go down. And when your income goes down, what happens to government revenue through tax? It will also not go down. That is the economic side of it. Then we have the social part of it, what we call energy poverty. This brings me down to another aspect. When we say poverty, we don't only talk about, most of us talk about income poverty. We also have what we call energy poverty. A situation, maybe let me bring it down and say, this light is in a low current. If you have your money, you go and buy gen, right? Even if you don't want to buy gen, you go and buy what we call solar. You can use solar. So the poor suffer more from energy poverty. There's also environmental aspect of it, which is the big one, the pollution. Sometimes when you are driving along the road, you see so many vehicles going. The smoke that will be coming out has its own impact on the environment. And we concluded by saying that the poor nation suffers more from environmental pollution rather than the rich nation, who are even the higher pollutants of the environment. Thank you very much.
Great summation. Thank you, Professor Clement Ighodaro. A round of applause for him again. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, gradually we are bringing this lecture to a close on the subject. We can clap. Distributional drivers of carbon emissions in 9 countries globally. It's been a wonderful time having every one of you here. Quite engaging audience. Please a round of applause for yourself. We appreciate all our distinguished guests who came around this afternoon. Also, we appreciate Mr. Peter Asabo and Prince Harrison Ohenzoa. Once again, you are welcome. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, with your kind permission, we bring this meeting to a close with a recitation of the Uniben anthem. Please rise as we sing the Uniben anthem. I'm sure you have it. You will have it now. Can we have it so that we don't have people? Yeah.
They are not there. Are they there? They are not there. Your people are not there. They are not there. There's nobody there.
All right, let's go. Our people are not there. Are you there? Great. All right, at the count of 2. 1, 2. All over the wide, wide world, our fruitful works unfold. What we sowed with joy and pride, with good our common goal. One heart and voice for all, we hear the bold clarion call. Arise, mighty Uniben, roll in your purple and gold, clad in your fertile green hem, knowledge for service untold. Greatest Uniben, thank you so much for coming. Professor Cathal will be outside for selfies.